The first full trailer for Netflix's Death Note movie is finally out, and as of this writing, it's trending like crazy on YouTube. And the backlash against it is even more severe than it was the last time. Currently, we're seeing a 50-50 split between likes and dislikes, and looking at the comments, I can only see it becoming more contentious. But while as a huge Death Note fan, I can see where this outrage is coming from, having watched the trailer like 20 times over at this point, I've actually got pretty high hopes for this movie. Let's run through the trailer so I can tell you why that is, and pick apart some hidden details to see what we can figure out about the plot and the progress, because unlike my last teaser analysis, there is actually some substance here to talk about. The trailer starts with Light talking about getting rid of people who make life miserable and dangerous for others, lines that are probably taken from his later conversation with Mia Sutton, the film's version of Misa Amane, in the library. We see him standing back as some bullies lay into a kid and steal his wallet. It's worth noting that he looks angry but doesn't actually step in until Mia rushes to the kid's aid. The implication here is that this version of Light is someone who needs a bit of a push to make a difference, but that he will go all in when he is pushed, to the point that he gets knocked out. Both Ryuk and Mia are shown to push him in one way or another later in the trailer. The next shot of Light snapping awake at his desk seems to be smashed together from two different scenes. Note the history texts in the first shot of him waking up compared to the Death Note on his desk in the second. That leads into the shot of the note falling from the first trailer. It's cool how they connect these disparate scenes together through a cut on the same motion. Interestingly, we can actually piece together at least one of the scenes that was cut into this sequence. Light reading the rules is probably what comes before the lights flicker. Looking at the bruise on his eye, you can tell this takes place after school on the day he got punched in the face. If I had to guess, I'd say the flickering light is how Ryuk draws his attention out of the classroom, down the hallway from the first teaser, and into the science room where Ryuk proceeds to scare the living shit out of him. We see that last moment pretty late in the trailer, during the action montage, with Light cowering under a desk in the science room before an invisible force knocks the desk away. When he appears, Ryuk looks intimidating and mysterious, and goddamn does Willem Dafoe's voice ever work for him.
Shall we begin?
I can't imagine more perfect casting. The following cut away from them in the lab shows Ryuk and Light at a crime scene of some kind, probably one of Light's doing using the Death Note. Based on how Ryuk talks to Light, it seems like he pushes him to write his first name in the Death Note. In the last trailer, we only saw him writing on a blank page for the first time in this lab. I'm not sure how much I like that change to the story. Light's decisiveness and self-assuredness are defining parts of his character in the anime, but distributing the guilt by making others spur him on makes him seem more sympathetic and less sociopathic. That could speak to the American viewpoint on Death Note's plot. America is much more gung-ho about capital punishment than Japan, which only executes a few criminals every year compared to the double-digit numbers we see in America. American youth is also increasingly motivated by a desire for justice, especially social justice, and Death Note's plot could highlight the extremes of that. America also has a real issue with school shootings, and the movie is almost obligated to address that given its setting and subject matter, not to mention the number of troubled kids who make Death Notes of their own in high school. And we can't forget America's global response to terrorism, which the trailer seems to be directly alluding to in this next shot. We see an explosion in some sort of desert compound, which I would guess is a terrorist camp in the Middle East, based on the fact that it's full of military equipment, and you can see what looks like several heads on pikes in the corner of the screen behind the Netflix logo. This suggests to me that the movie could comment on the similarity between what Light does with the Death Note and what the US government does with drone strikes. Now, that might be reaching and expecting too much, but there's potential here for the movie to say something meaningful about the current state of our world. Jumping forward, we do actually see a page of the Death Note, and one of the names written on it is Abdul Aswad, who eats a grenade, which would seem to be what's happening in this shot. Below Abdul on the page is the name Mohammed something. The Netflix logo covers that up as well, who I would guess is part of the same terrorist group and dies under similar circumstances, possibly in the same scene. Looking higher on the page, we see that the man with the shotgun who steps into traffic is named James Brode. This seems to be a recreation of the hostage situation where Light makes his first kill in the manga. However, in the movie, Light makes 2 kills before this: Anthony Skomal, who stabs himself, and Kenny Doyle, who is decapitated. It seems like like Kenny is the bully we see Light try to stop at the beginning of the trailer, since later we see a ladder coming toward that guy's face in a very decapitating Final Destination kind of way. In general, movie Light is pretty creative with how he kills people, in contrast with the anime, where Light almost exclusively uses heart attacks. I'm not sure how he's going to establish Kira without a consistent method of killing, or how L is going to trace back this first kill, but it'll be interesting to see how the movie handles that. On the other page, we see more things written in the book in different handwriting, which don't appear to be the how to use it rules. These could be Ryuk's entries, or possibly those of whoever owned the note previously. The framing of this library shot is fantastic, but it has some potentially troubling implications. Light seems to be pitching the concept of Kira to Mia. This is a pretty severe deviation from their relationship in the original series, where Misa is just an incompetent annoyance who shows up well after the fact when Light has started killing people. A later shot shows Light teaching Mia how to use the Death Note, implying that they may work together to create the Kira persona from the very beginning of the story instead of working independently at first. The shot has a weird, intimate vibe to it as well. It's clear from this and other material released so far that the movie intends to play up the romance between them, and that it probably won't be as one-sided and manipulative as it is in the anime. This could really hurt the story, but if they're trying to make Light more sympathetic to reflect the values of the audience, it could be a good choice. The shot where Light closes up the notebook shows the Kenny Doyle decapitation note above a bunch of scribbles instead of the names we saw on the page previously. This is probably a prop that Nat Wolff has to pretend to write in, since it's pretty hard to act while also writing things down accurately. That could be a little distracting in the final product, but this isn't animation, so what can you do? The shot of prisoners falling dead in a prison yard seems to be the start of Kira's killing spree. After that, we see Light and Mia peeking in on a group of Kira worshippers. This is interesting. Light didn't interact with his followers much until much later in the manga, except for Misa, and never directly like this. I like this change. Exposing Kira directly to these results of his actions is a great way of feeding his ego. The line,
"I think you're not crazy enough. We could change the world,"
implies that Mia is also pushing Light into becoming Kira. Again, I'm not sure if I like the idea of Light not being as self-directed as he is in the anime, but if this is a comment on how peers can push each other to extremism, it could be really interesting. And distributing a bit of Light's intelligence and drive to Misa will make them both seem a bit more human, especially her, since in the anime she was a total idiot. That is, of course, assuming that this film actually has something to say instead of just being
the most kick-ass version of a movie with a kid with a killer notebook.
Based on director Adam Wingard's previous work and passion for the series, I'm hoping this is the case. Fun side fact, Light and Mia are standing in front of the Smile Diner here, a distinctively tacky comfort food and Chinese food joint on Pender Street in downtown Vancouver. The food there is pretty awful, but it is just down the street from EXP Bar, a very cool video game themed restaurant. Next up is a shot that a lot of anime fans are complaining about. L addressing a crowd in front of the Seattle Police Department. And yes, it does seem out of character for the almost agoraphobic L to be doing this, but in a day and age when people talking through computer screens is commonplace, him holding a press conference does actually make him seem weirder than how he's portrayed in the anime would. We also see him knocking over a wine glass full of Skittles on his desk while he's yelling at Light, so at least some of the awkward weirdo from the anime is in this character. Some people have complained that the Skittles shot paints L as too emotional, and I just have to ask those people, have you seen the anime? He's an excitable, theatrical weirdo. At one point, he gets in a goddamn fist fight with Light. L is calculating, yes, but he's not always calm and collected. L's speech is intercut with shots of L and Watari investigating several of Kira's crime scenes. We get a second look at the nightclub massacre from the first trailer, which, as we learned from the news coverage, is a group of Yakuza who were killed by Kira. It seems unlikely to me that the dead strippers in this room were named directly by Light, which implies that at least one Death Note rule isn't in effect here. The instructions in the note can incidentally kill unnamed bystanders, which was impossible in the anime and manga. The old white guy we see behind Watari is probably Light's dad, assuming that he's still a detective in this version. I absolutely love the cut from L saying that Light isn't an omnipotent being, to the shot of the church marked with Kira's graffiti, to a shot of another church crumbling in some third world slum. It's a great way of showing the decline of Kira in the public eye and Light's fragility as a man. Not all of the editing in this trailer is absolutely brilliant, but this cut is. I'm hoping for more symbolism like this in the movie itself. On the subject of symbolism, the shot of Elle standing in front of a waving American flag feels uncharacteristically patriotic. It makes me worried that the movie will paint Light's actions as a rejection of American values rather than an extension of some of them, which I think could make the film feel a lot less nuanced and morally challenging than it has the potential to be. A big strength of the original is that it makes you question your own convictions as you watch Light do what he does. Stuff like Light yelling at Mia,
We're not the good guys anymore.
also points to the film oversimplifying things. I'm hoping that this is an excerpt of him talking about the public perception of Kira rather than their actual moral standing, because that would be really dumb. Mia seems to be a lot more active in this story, and the shot of her tasing a random guy in the parking lot does indicate to me that she could be less cautious than Light and a big source of problems for him down the line. The trailer also seems to imply that Elle is going to confront Light directly by cutting to the two of them talking in some sort of cafe, but I suspect that this is a bit of trailer trickery. It would be weird and totally break the story if Elle knew Light was Kira instead of simply having a 20% suspicion, and it would also be very out of character for him to confront him like that. What Elle is saying is probably taken from a public speech directed at Kira, while from their body language it appears that the actual scene here is from a less dramatic but still antagonistic conversation like the ones that they have in the show frequently. From here we jump to an action montage, which is a little light on story details, although I will say that I love the music it's set to. But between the random gunshots and extended versions of stuff that we've seen in previous trailers, there is one interesting tidbit. The abandoned mansion that we see Light walking towards looks like it could be the orphanage where Elle grew up, implying that Light may take a more active role in trying to find Elle's identity while Elle hunts him down. All that aside, the shot is beautiful and inventive, which can be said for a lot of the shots in this trailer. The trailer slows down in its final shot, showing a crowd of kids milling about in Light's high school as he remarks,
What they want is a god. So let's give it to them.
if nothing else of the original character remains in this story, his god complex certainly does. It's become increasingly clear that Netflix's version of Death Note is making a lot of deviations from the original story, and it's likely that such deviations are going to be upsetting for fans, but I think it's important to look at them in context. In the past, I've railed against adaptations of properties I love for destroying the soul of the original works, but I've also argued that it can be fundamentally necessary to change plot points and even character details to make a story work in a new medium or setting, so long as the soul of the work remains intact. Edge of Tomorrow changes a lot from All You Need Is Kill, but it's still a great adaptation. The brooding teenage Light Turner is clearly different from the clean-cut honor student Light Yagami, but I think that to a certain extent that makes sense. Light is supposed to be a product of his society, and early 2000s Japan was a very different place from present-day America. We don't idealize the honor student in the same way here as they do over there, and we don't have the same kind of unwavering respect for cops either. A smart kid who's the son of a cop won't be the same kind of person here as they are over in Japan. Light is clearly smart, but he doesn't seem to have Light Yagami's moral rigidity. A featurette shows him selling his homework to classmates. He doesn't start from the same place, but Death Note is about Light's descent into self-justified evil, so as long as he ends in the same destination, I think that that can work. But it is an important point of contrast that Light Yagami is such an upstanding, righteous person on the outside, and that he can become so evil simply by being so sure that he's right. So if the Death Note movie does lose this, it had better offer something to make up for it. We see L show a much tougher public face in this trailer than he ever does in the anime, but we also see his playful, awkward side, and so far he seems to be the closest to his anime counterpart of the characters we've seen, aside from Ryuk, who is perfect. As for Mia, she seems to be much different from Misa, but considering that Misa wasn't the strongest part of the original story to begin with, some change there could actually improve the movie. None of this is to say that Death Note will definitely be a good movie movie or a good adaptation. There are some worrying signs that it could be severely dumbed down compared to the original, but there are many more that indicate more thoughtful storytelling and direction driven by creative vision rather than studio influence. Despite their fumbling of simulcast releases for licensed anime, I trust Netflix to let directors make good movies without too much meddling on their part, something that I couldn't say for a big studio like Paramount. Death Note could be a train wreck like Ghost in the Shell, but personally I don't think it will be. It's clear that the people making this actually care about what they're making. Moreover, I think that it's silly at this stage in the game to be freaking out over minor details or melodramatic writing rather than the big picture thematic underpinnings of the movie. Yes, a line like,
"You're the one who flew into the sun. I'm just here to make sure you burn,"
is pretty on the nose as references go, but alluding to Icarus shows an understanding that Death Note is fundamentally a tale of hubris and the resulting downfall, and the trailer's imagery backs that understanding up. Compare that to Ghost in the Shell, whose first reveal trailer indicated a portrayal of transhumanism as an explicitly bad thing in direct contrast to the original work, resulting from an unimaginative wholesale copying of RoboCop's plotline. And you'll see what real disrespect for source material looks like. Maybe I'm off base here. Maybe I'm over trusting of Netflix because of their excellent track record handling other films and shows. But I think we should be waiting to see how this one pans out, not crucifying it simply for existing. If it's warranted, there will be plenty of time to do that after August 25th. I'll be reviewing the film when it does come out, so if you want to see what I think of it then, be sure to subscribe to Mother's Basement and ring that little notification bell to catch everything I put out. And if you want to help me make more videos like this or any of the other ones I make, consider supporting me on Patreon, like all of these lovely people have. If you're hungry for more Death Note right now, then click on the left to watch my analysis of the show's opening theme song, or on the right to hear my thoughts about the first trailer. Or you can subscribe to my second channel, Basement Escape, for an extensive podcast discussion of the movie and show with special guests straight from Anime Expo. For now, I'm Geoff Thew, professional shitbag, signing out from my mother's basement.